All right, let's dive into something I think is one of the coolest upgrades happening in AI right now, Agentic RAG. Now, if you've played around with retrieval augmented generation, you know it's a powerhouse. But here's the thought. What if we could give it a brain? Let it actually think, plan, and get this, even fix its own mistakes. Let's see how that works. So let's start with that big question. What if your RAG could fix its own mistakes? See, a standard RAG system can sometimes grab the wrong info or just get confused by a tricky question. It gets one shot, and that's it. But what if it could look at an answer it generated and go, that doesn't feel right, and then decide to try again? Well, that's exactly where agency completely changes the game. So what is Agentic RAG, really? The best way to think about it is like this. Basic RAG is a super efficient librarian. You ask a question, it zips off and finds a relevant book for you, fast. Agentic RAG, on the other hand, is like a seasoned expert researcher. It doesn't just hand you the first book it finds. No way. It actually plans out its research strategy, uses a bunch of different tools, cross-references sources, and will even correct its own work if it spots an error. I mean, it's a massive leap forward.
Okay, so how does an agent pull this off? It's not magic, even though it kind of feels like it. It all comes down to three fundamental patterns that together basically form the agent's mind.
First up, we've got iterative retrieval. So instead of just grabbing the first documents it finds and kind of hoping for the best, the agent gets into a loop. It retrieves some info, creates a draft answer, and then, this is the crucial part, it actually pauses to think.
And you can see that logic playing out right here. After it gets to docs and generates an answer, it hits this critical checkpoint, a confidence check. If it's feeling really good about the answer, say over 80% confident, great, it sends it back. But if that confidence is low, notice what happens. It doesn't just give up. It actively refines its own query, basically asking a smarter question, and then runs the whole process again.
This comparison really makes it crystal clear, right? A one-shot query is brittle. It either works or it doesn't. But this retry and refine loop makes the whole system so much more robust. It's got a built-in way to get smarter, which means it's way more likely to nail those really complex or kind of vague questions.
Okay, next up is a pattern called REACT, which is short for reasoning and acting. And this is a really powerful framework that lets the agent get into this dynamic loop of thinking and then doing something to solve a problem.
The whole process is actually wonderfully simple, but so effective. It all starts with a thought, where the agent basically says to itself, okay, what should I do next? Then it takes an action, like running a search. And finally, it makes an observation, where it looks at what it got back. That observation then fuels the next thought, and this cycle just keeps going until the agent is confident it's got the final answer.
So you can really see the shift here. Basic RAG is, well, it's a passive pipeline. You give it documents, it gives you an answer. But with REACT, the agent is an active player in the game. It's thinking, it's acting, observing, and deciding for itself what the best next move is to get to the right answer. It's a night and day difference.
And this third pattern, self-correction, this might be the most important one of all. This is where the agent becomes its own quality control department. It just doesn't blindly trust its own work.
So here's how it works. After it drafts an answer, it runs a verification check. It essentially asks itself, hey, is this answer actually backed up by the documents I found? If the check comes back no, it doesn't just stop. It figures out the specific problem, like maybe a fact isn't supported, and then it goes back to find more documents to fix that exact issue before trying to generate an even better answer.
This is just a massive step forward for reliability. Instead of just crossing your fingers and hoping the answer is right, the agent actively critiques its own work and improves it. This self-correction loop builds a layer of trustworthiness right into the system, which is absolutely critical.
So our agents can think. That's awesome. But now it needs to be able to do things. A great plan isn't worth much if you don't have the tools to actually execute it.
And with an agent, that standard document retrieval that we know from RAG, it becomes just one tool in a whole toolbox. The agent can be hooked up to search the web for real-time info, use a calculator for math problems, or even just check today's date. The key is the agent decides which tool it needs for the job at hand. And that quote right there, that is the fundamental shift in how we should think about this. RAG is no longer the entire system. It's just a really powerful, specialized tool that the agent can pull out of its toolbox whenever it needs to search its private knowledge base.
Okay, so we've got these patterns, we've got these tools. What's the payoff? How does all this come together to answer questions that would totally stump a basic RAG system? Well, the answer is multi-step reasoning.
Instead of trying to tackle some huge, messy question all at once, the agent is smart about it. First, it decomposes the query. It breaks it down into smaller, logical pieces. Then, it goes to work answering each of those little sub-questions, often using its RAG tool. And finally, it synthesizes all those little answers into one coherent, complete response.
And what's so cool about this is that the most important work the agent does often happens before it even looks for a single document. Its ability to take a tangled-up question and break it into a simple, step-by-step plan is where you really see its reasoning power shine.
Now, I know what you might be thinking. This all sounds amazing, but maybe a little bit complicated to build. The good news is there's actually a very clear, step-by-step path to adding these agentic abilities into your own systems. And the great thing is, you don't have to do it all at once. You can start with the basic RAG pipeline you already have. Then, you can layer on that confidence score. Once you have that, you can build the query refinement loop. From there, integrate the self-correction check, and only then do you need to start adding other tools. It's a totally practical, incremental way to go from a simple retriever to a true thinking agent.
So, what's the big takeaway? When should you actually do this? You should seriously consider adding agency when you find that basic RAG is struggling, when your users are asking questions that are ambiguous, or have multiple parts, or need info that's more current than your documents. Agentic RAG is the perfect solution for handling that kind of complexity.
And that really brings us to the most exciting point. By giving our RAG systems the power to plan, to act, and to self-correct, we're not just making a better search tool, we are literally transforming them into reasoning engines. So the real question to leave you with isn't just about what RAG can do, it's about what new problems you are going to solve with it.